Welcome everyone to Breaking Big Blue. I'm your host, Jordan Ron on ESPN, ESPN.com. Giants reporter, and we're here with the Coaching Carousel Part 1 episode, okay? It's a little programming note. We're back this week. We're going to do the podcast with Bobby Skinner on Thursday morning this week. So that would be Thursday, January 15th. Okay, so we're kind of agreed that we're going to settle into Wednesday being the day, but I have something to do Wednesday this week. So it'll be Thursday this week. This will be a special Tuesday broadcast, old school style, YouTube, wherever you find your podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. You'll be able to get this one there. And so I want to catch you up. It's obviously the coaching search, part 1. Here we are. Coaching search is underway. All these candidates have interviewed. It's all about John Harbaugh right now. Now, real quick, side note, what's going on right now? The Steelers lose. This is taping this on Tuesday morning. Steelers losing the wild card round again on Monday night. Mike Tomlin has just officially stepped down as coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, early indications are Mike Tomlin likely going to go to TV. Sure. If you're the Giants, though, if you're any team that is looking for a head coach, right, you at least make that call. You see if he's interested. And what is out there right now, because we sat here a month ago, like, this isn't a great year for head coaches, right? It's probably going to be a weak head coaching market, a weak group or pool of candidates. Well, guess what? The pool of candidates out there right now are, and we don't know if Mike Tomlin is actually available, but he's out there. So you make that call. Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, right? Mike McCarthy, who's won a Super Bowl and has a good resume, a lot of winning. Kevin Stefanski, who's a 2-time Coach of the Year. And then you have some of the young guys. You have Chris Shula, Clint Kubiak, Jesse Minter, who's now the hot name, who I know that he has supporters in the Giants building. Like Antonio Pierce, who I personally think would be a guy that I would kind of want to bet on as a second time, learn from my mistakes kind of guy. Like, I think this is now become a loaded group of potential coaches, a loaded group of coaching candidates, one of the best you've seen in years. Now, the Giants, meanwhile, are all over John Harbaugh. It's gained a lot of steam. They're heavily into it. Joe Schoen, the Giants general manager, has spoken personally to John Harbaugh. So have all the other general managers, to be fair, that are, teams that are looking for coaches as preliminary work. But Joe Schoen has spoken to John Harbaugh, given his pitch. Chris Mara, ownership, right? John Mara's health, not great. Chris Mara, key voice in the room right now. It's what I was told, ownership contingent in some or most of these or all these meetings, interviews. Steve Tisch, who also, by the way, notable that he's in that room. He's at least the last search, he kind of was a little bit more hands-off. Even Joe Judge had to get the final approval, but I don't think he was in there for every interview. My understanding is he's in the room for interviews. John Mara's been in the room for interviews, at least when he can be. Not sure if it's every time. And Chris Mara has been in the room for interviews in regards to ownership. That's the ownership contingent. That's the representation of ownership. And so somebody needed to go, I guess, and go talk, and a great job by Ian O'Connor getting the scoop, like not a scoop you get very often, where the owner, who in this case Chris Mara, said, yeah, I actually went to go visit him. And this, probably not an accident, came out right after the Atlanta Falcons said, oh, guess what? We interviewed John Harbaugh, which technically kind of sort of wasn't really an interview, was an interview. You could label these however you want. There was a call with him, and they put that out. And so it's considered an interview. But now you have the Giants seriously showing, hey, look, and we knew this already. We are really interested in this guy. We want this guy bad. To the point where Chris Mara goes and has lunch with him at John Harbaugh's home and sits down and has a conversation with him. So the Giants' interest, legit, serious. Now, I think if it came down to it, you told me right now, all right, who's going to be the Giants coach? I don't know if I might have called him Jim 3 times already. Who knows? John Harbaugh, right now, I can't tell you if John Harbaugh wants the Giants, right? And whereas no one else is an option. I still think that Tennessee, I still think that Atlanta, they're threats. Dolphins to a degree, small degree, because apparently that relationship that we thought originally, that some people thought originally, I didn't really know what that relationship was, that between the Harbaughs and Stephen Ross isn't quite as strong as it was originally made out to be. Now, I always thought, and if you go back and listen to the tape, even last time, I said the Giants are going to get their chance to sit down and talk and meet with John Harbaugh. The Giants are going to get their opportunity to sit down and talk and interview John Harbaugh. That's still the case. Right now, taping this on Tuesday, I've heard it's going to be either later this week or early next week. So he's taking his time. He's not going to rush this decision. He's doing his background work. Well, also, what I've heard, this is what's important to John Harbaugh, right? Ownership. Clearly, obviously, that's your boss. Imperative. Organizational structure, right? The GM. Okay, that's the one where if you're the Giants, you hold your breath, right? But ownership, Giants, especially compared to most of these jobs that are open, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. We'll do, I'll rank the best to the worst job openings, in my opinion. But ownership, Giants, generally considered strong ownership group, loyal, patient. They'll give you the resources you need, right? Organizational structure. There's two ownership groups. They get along well. Now, there are some little obstacles you obviously have to navigate when you run the New York Giants. You have ownership involved in personnel. John and Chris's nephew is one of Joe Shane's right-hand men. That exists. We can't ignore that exists. But I've heard nothing that the Giants' organization or organizational structure has any sort of red flag that would make John Harbaugh, in effect, not interested in the job. And I'll get to it in a few minutes, but when you compare the Giants' ownership and structure and who they have in place, at least at the top, I'm talking ownership, compared to some of the other teams that are looking for coaches, it looks pretty good all of a sudden. Now, the Steelers and Ravens, there are new additions to the party, and it kind of changes the equation a little bit. But guess what? John Harbaugh is not going to the Baltimore Ravens. Mike Tomlin, if he decides to coach again next year, it's not going to be with the Steelers, and it's not going to be with the Ravens. You can't imagine him going to the Ravens. That would just be such a slap in the face to the organization and the legacy and everything, because that's their rival. So those two organizations are not necessarily in any way, shape, or form targets for the top two guys. Assuming Mike Tomlin is available. We'll find out in the coming days, hours, whatever it may be. But that's the initial prerequisites, right? Now, in regards to the team, things that I hear John Harbaugh desires, a quality quarterback, a strong quarterback position, okay? The Giants have Jackson Dart. Now, obviously, it depends on how you evaluate, but there's clearly some skill there. There's some ability. There's something to work with. It makes off-script plays in like a Lamar Jackson type of way. I'm not saying he's Lamar Jackson. Don't conflate that. But he is an off-script kind of guy. You could build an offense around him. John Harbaugh has experience doing that. So there are some things to like with the Giants quarterback situation. Number two is draft capital. Giants don't have anything crazy in terms of draft capital, but guess what? They do have the number 5 overall pick. They have a top 5 pick. That's valuable. Okay? They have all their picks except for a third rounder, I believe. The third rounder that they used to get Jackson Dart. Can they replenish it? Sure. There are moves out there that the Giants can make. We'll get to that later on down the line in a few weeks. If they want to replenish some of that draft capital, they have some assets that can do that. And then number 3 is cap space plus flexibility. And if you look at the Giants' cap situation, it's pretty solid, pretty sound. They don't have a ton of money this offseason. I think they're in the $20 million range. But guess what? That's going to increase. They're going to add just easy straight cuts. Graham Gano, James Hudson, whatever. $20 million they'll have there. Bobby Okereke, if they want to go that route, that'll be a questionable one. That's another $10 million basically. So they'll be able to create another $20 to $30 million in salary cap space this offseason. So the Giants will have in the range of $40, $50 million in salary cap space this season. Right now they have $100 million plus the following year. So they're solid there. That allows then John Harbaugh will come in, add free agents, give the team the shape and feel that he would want it to be. So in those three categories, the Giants are pretty good. They're in pretty good shape. And if you look at the other teams, the only one that I look at and say, okay, they might be better is the Titans, the Tennessee Titans. Now they have their own problems. We'll get to those in a few minutes when we rank the teams here of what the best job is. But it depends on what your quarterback evaluation is. If you like what you've seen from Cam Ward, same way you could like what you see from Jackson Dart, or you could not like it. There's a bunch of different options there. But either way, two talented guys. Maybe you like one more than the other. You watch the tape. This guy, but Cam Ward had a good, strong finish to the season. He's supposed to be a good team guy. I know there's people that like him. He was the number one pick for a reason. So I don't think it's a slam dunk that people think Jackson Dart is that much better than Cam Ward if you're just evaluating quarterback for future. I don't think that's the case. They have a lot of draft capital, the Titans, and they have a lot of cap flexibility. They have a new management group, a fairly new general manager. I believe it's Mike Borgonzi, came from Kansas City, relatively new. I think that was from last year. There are things to like with the Tennessee Titans. So they do fulfill those three prerequisites, those three categories. Quarterback, draft capital, cap space flexibility. Giants, too, pretty good shape with those. Those two, when we look at those three categories, make the most sense if that's what he's looking for. Now, other teams may enter the mix. Who knows? I think you still have to keep an eye on Green Bay. You still have to keep an outside eye on Miami. Not because it's a great situation, just because there is some sort of relationship with Stephen Ross. But Green Bay, fulfills a lot of that because they have the team, the roster, the talent, the quarterback. Now, they don't have the cap space and flexibility, but they already have the roster, so you might not need that in that case as much. And then I did hear a story at one point from somebody who used to work for John Harbaugh that when they went to Green Bay years back, I don't know, 2016, 17, 18, whatever it was, he took the coaches or the staff on a tour and waxed poetically and was all nostalgic about Green Bay and the place and the history and all that. So, yes, the Packers want to bring back Matt LaFleur, but until that's done, or until John Harbaugh signs on the dotted line with a team, it's something to at least keep an eye on. I don't know what happens there. It doesn't seem like it's likely, but the door is not completely shut yet because Matt LaFleur does not have a contract extension yet. And if you're going to make that move, it would only be from one guy. It would be a guy of that ilk, like a Mike Tomlin or a John Harbaugh. Just saying. Something we're going to just keep an eye on in the back. But in the meantime, I think the Giants are positioned very well. They have extreme interest in John Harbaugh. I believe he's at the top of their list. And John Harbaugh has interest in the Giants. I believe he's near the top of their list. Do I know if he's number one? Absolutely not. But I know he's very intrigued by the New York Giants. Very interested in the New York Giants. So there's a real chance that happens. And if you say right now, is John Harbaugh going to be the Giants head coach? I would say the likelihood is John Harbaugh, Kevin Stefanski, Antonio Pierce, or Jesse Minter. Like one of those four guys will likely be the Giants head coach. Now, Mike McCarthy, I'm doing this. He's in there today. Keeping him alive and afloat, but he hasn't done his interview yet, so I don't know. Neither has Jesse Minter, but that's a guy I know has support in the building as well. I think he would have a chance. So if you tell me which pool of candidates, because there's a lot more out there you're talking about. There's the coordinators. There's Vance Joseph, Lou Anarumo, Darren Rizzi, who's assistant head coach, special teams coordinator for the Broncos. You got Pierce, who I just named, who was the former coach of the Raiders. You have, who else is interviewing? Who else did I miss? I definitely missed somebody. Kafka. Chris Shula is going to be in the mix. Clint Kubiak is going to be in the mix. You know, these are guys that have had Raheem Morris interview. That's the one I forgot. He was the former head coach. So there's a lot of options. But if you say, well, here's the pool of candidates I think it's going to land in, you got Harbaugh, Stefanski, Minter, Pierce. No specific order. See, in that pool. Mike McCarthy, don't know. We'll wait and see. Mike Tomlin, not including him right now because sounds like, don't know. Sounds like, at least originally, he's probably going to take a year off at the very minimum. But, back to the original point, what a group of coaching candidates this has turned out to be. John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, Kevin Stefanski, Mike McCarthy. Just the start. Forget the hot coordinators. We even get there yet. Those four guys, 3 of the 4 of them have won Super Bowls. Super Bowl winning head coaches. Pretty good. Pretty good year for the Giants to be in the coaching market. On to the next one. The coaching carousel continues. And so here we go. There are a lot of, like I just mentioned, excellent, really high quality coaches available in this year's coaching search. There are also a lot of teams looking for a head coach. By my count, we have 8. The Pittsburgh Steelers just came open today, Mike Tomlin. The Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, right? So basically that whole AFC North, almost, at least, the whole AFC North. The Titans, the Dolphins, the Raiders, the Falcons, the Giants. Okay? Now you say, all right, like, who is the Giants' competition? Now, fortunately for the Giants, as we mentioned, the Ravens are not competition for John Harbaugh. And I don't think, vice versa, they're competition for the Steelers are either. Like, I don't think either of those guys would want to do that. But when we start with the teams, okay, who has the best chance to land any coach they want? To me, you have to start with those 2 teams. Okay, number 1 to me is the Ravens. Okay, still have Lamar Jackson. Yes, he's 30. He's getting banged up a little bit. Their roster's a little bit older, but great organization, right? Quarterback in place for the next few years at the very minimum. Now, he might not be the guy who plays until he's 40, but I think Lamar Jackson, you can feel pretty good at least until his mid-30s, until Lamar Jackson's going to last till 35. Yes, the roster needs a little retweaking. It's getting older. Don't have a ton of money. But well-run organization. Ownership is supposed to be great. Stays out, hands off, gives you all the resources you need. The organizational setup is supposed to be like one of the top best that there is. Having spoken to people from Baltimore, like all their setup and organizational departments, like even like video, analytics, statistics, like miles ahead of most of these other teams that are out there. Like they're in the top 5 of teams in regards to that. So Baltimore Ravens, to me, by far, the number 1 choice here. Great job. Now the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be number 2 because I talk about stability, talk about patience, talk about ownership. You're talking about a team that since 1969 has had 3 coaches. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. 3 coaches. You're talking, what is that, since 69? So what is that? 31 and 26 years. So the 31 and 26 is what? 57 years. 3 coaches in 57 years. Are you kidding me? Like, that's crazy. Yes, they don't have a quarterback. They got to figure that out. Their roster's old. They probably need to reset it. Mike Tomlin leaving gives them an opportunity to reset it. I would like the opportunity, if I'm a coach, to reset it for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But guess what? They're going to give you time to do it. They're going to be patient. There's a culture of winning there. There's a culture of playing tough. Like, there's a lot there to like with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Even though their quarterback situation, not good. Not good. 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers and what? Nothing else. Where are you getting a quarterback? Huge question that they have to face. But to me, that's the second best job. Still a really good job just because of the organization. To me, number 3 is actually the Giants. Okay? Ownership, again, generally well-regarded and patient. Do they have their faults? Are they a little old school as an organization still? Sure. I think that's fair to say. Do they have little obstacles, like I mentioned before, with ownership and personnel? Sure. Something you have to deal with. New York market still has cachet. Giants brand, it does mean something. Ownership considered solid. I know John Mara, obviously his health is a little bit of a concern. Decent young talent. They have some young pieces to build with. Overall roster, not great. Clearly, went 7-27 the last 2 years. You know, our Mike Clay from ESPN, I think he had the Giants 23 or 24 in regards to their roster ranking at the beginning of the year, and 31st or 32nd the year before. So roster still needs a lot of work. But there are some pieces to work with. And if you like Jackson Dart, which I think most coaches do, and he is a selling point, I think in this case too, from what you hear, John Harbaugh likes him, that he is a selling point. To me, the Giants are number 3. Number 4, to me, would actually be the Tennessee Titans. Okay, and you say the Titans, but their owner, I believe her name is Amy Strunk Adams. I think I might be pronouncing that wrong. But they have a fairly new GM in Mike Borgonzi, who came over from the Chiefs. Seem to maybe have their front office set up or organizational setup figured out a little bit. Amy Adams Strunk. Okay. Yeah, so, you know, they have a little bit of a weird setup there. She's been all over the place. Ownership, a little bit of a concern there. But if you have a guarantee that, hey, we're going to be kind of hands off here, that would make it a really good job because you got a young quarterback to build around. You have assets. You have a clean slate. It's a great city. There's a new stadium coming. There's a lot to like with the Tennessee Titans. You have to be sold that Cam Ward's the guy, that he's the dude. But I think I could be sold, or most coaches can be sold, that he's the guy that you could build around. He was the number 1 pick this past year. Had a strong finish. Didn't have much around him this year. Was in a really tough spot. They fired the coach in the middle of his first season. But I think it's still a pretty good job. Next to me would be the Atlanta Falcons, okay? But only because I like their roster. The idea that Matt Ryan's there, though, and some people try to sell it as a selling point, to me is lunacy. It seems crazy. Matt Ryan, who's never done this job in his life, who has no experience doing that job, executive, front office, personnel, anything. He's going to oversee the general manager and head coach. To me, that seems wild. Like, imagine explaining that to someone else in a different field. Imagine going to the financial field and explaining to someone, we're going to bring in somebody to be above you, your boss, who, by the way, yeah, he was in finance in a way, but he's never done your job. He has none of these other jobs that he's overseeing he's ever done. But we're going to put this guy in charge to be an executive and run an organization. Okay. I know it's worked a little bit here or there. Like, John Elway had some success in it. But more often than that, it doesn't work. So I don't view that as a selling point in Atlanta. Owner, little up and down. as well. But to me, talent, pretty good. Like, their defense has been built up. They got some weapons. Their quarterback situation is clearly a question. Michael Penix Jr., we don't know if he's going to be any good. He definitely comes with serious risk with his third ACL. So there's serious risk in that. And that's kind of why they're here in the middle. But the roster as a whole is pretty good. Just figure out that quarterback position. A lot easier said than done. But then I have the Dolphins. Don't think it's a good job. The Tua situation's a mess. Owner Stephen Ross has been all over the place. Very hands-on. Done some, things that have gotten the team in trouble. He kept Chris Greer forever when he should have been gone years ago. So that, to me, that and Tua alone has the Dolphins near the bottom here. Now, the rest of the roster is actually not that bad. They were able to win games with Mike McDaniel. Remember that of all these teams I'm about to name, they were one of the most successful this year. Now the last two, you can flip-flop them. Raiders, Browns, Raiders. Ownership has been a problem in both those places. Again, Tom Brady's running the show. Who says Tom Brady knows anything about running the show? He was a quarterback. He was an amazing quarterback, a legendary all-time great quarterback. Doesn't mean he's a great executive. Ownership, Mark Davis. They get rid of coaches, 2 years in a row, basically one-year coaches. The Pete Carroll thing was so flawed from the start. Makes me bang my head against the wall. Yeah, a team that needs a fresh rebuild is going to hire a 70-something-year-old coach and bring in a 35-year-old Geno Smith. Okay, it didn't work out. Surprise, surprise. Consider me shocked. No, not really. And then the Cleveland Browns, quarterback situation, a mess. Not a huge believer in Shedeur Sanders. Who knows, though? Maybe he has a chance. At least it's something to work with. Deshaun Watson case, though, an absolute mess that's been. Owner, basically, it's been pretty well documented that was his move. All guaranteed money. Red flag alert everywhere around that organization. Defense is actually really good, but no quarterback, questionable ownership. That's why they're at the bottom. They're last. The Raiders at least are one spot ahead of them, but only because the Raiders have the number one overall pick, and they're likely going to have Fernando Mendoza. And if you like Fernando Mendoza, and he's been super impressive, and I wasn't totally sold on him going into the college football playoffs, but watching the college football playoffs, I'm looking at it like now, wow, Fernando Mendoza is actually better than I thought. The dude looks like he could be an absolute stud. Now, maybe it's still a risk. We don't know. But they have the number one overall pick. If they rebuild like they should from the ground up, at least it's somewhere to start. Somewhere interesting. On to the next one. All right, let's close this out with a little quick Jordan on the beat. This is Red Tape. Let's like to cover the Giants work for ESPN or cover the NFL in general. And this is, by the way, this is how you know Breaking Big Blue is back, baby. It's back. Different segments, Jordan on the beat, Giants After Dark we'll have in the next few weeks. Like, we're back, baby. This is Breaking Big Blue at its core. At its core. Deep down, if you dig deep down, what do you find? Boop, 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 boop. You hear this incredible electrocution type noise. It feels like you're getting electrocuted in between segments. Like, you missed that, right? I know you missed that. A little programming update. We're going to do the Bobby Skinner Giants Nation Show collab this week on Thursday. Generally, though, book it. Put it in your calendar. Wednesdays. That's when we're going to do the show in general. But this week, I got to go to ESPN, actually, this week up in Bristol. I'm busy on Wednesday. Thursday, though, we will do this week's show. Hopefully, we have more coaching stuff as the beat moves on. But that's what this breaking Giants Jordan on the beat, I should say, is going to show, is what it's like to be in a coaching search. It's like you're always on call. You have your phone next to you at all times. The second that somebody is about to get hired, the team then has to go inform the candidates who didn't get hired. So they start informing the candidates, hey, sorry, we're going in a different direction. That person finds out, then they tell another person, eventually comes back, and everybody finds out. And so within 15 minutes, basically, at that point, boom, that's when you know. I remember I was pulled over on the side of a road coming back from Houston, Texas. I believe it was when McAdoo was hired. Yeah. And I was on the side of the road, and I had it, and I was just trying to confirm it, and I remember that like it was yesterday. I remember exactly where I was in front. I was on Route 9 in Old Bridge Township in front of the Grand Marquis. think I've been pulled into the Grand Marquis parking lot, if I remember correctly. So there you go. That's kind of what it's like to cover a coaching search. In regards to this coaching search, a little different in the fact that the Giants in the past have put out announcements, say, hey, we interviewed this candidate, here's who interviewed him, here's who was in the room. They're not doing that this time, which is a little different. You see most of the other teams are putting out announcements, not necessarily who's involved in the interviews for each team, but, hey, we interviewed X candidate. The Giants are not. So we just have to be on top of who they're bringing in, what day. I have a notebook, a schedule. I'm trying to write everything down, keep track of it as we move along here. A little bit harder, but for the most part, we know everybody who's come in so far. We know everyone who's met with the Giants. Maybe there will, at the end of the day, be a secret candidate we didn't know about. That's possible. It's always possible. I don't think that's the case right now. I think for the most part, we've been on top of it. There's a lot of different candidates, a lot of different kinds of candidates. There's some more candidates coming down the road. John Harbaugh, hopefully at some point, that's the intention. I think both John Harbaugh expects to give the Giants an interview and speak to the Giants face-to-face and sit down in regards to a full interview. And the Giants also expect for John Harbaugh. I can't even imagine if when I go back and listen to this how many times I called him Jim. And if I did, just ignore it because it's going to happen. Jim, John, Jim. By the way, I actually did cover John Harbaugh back in Philadelphia. So I do know him. I don't know Jim. Never met Jim. I do know John, so I should be able to get his name right, but I still can't. But anyway, that's kind of how the coaching search works from a reporter perspective. So you just hope that it doesn't come down at a time when you're kind of indisposed or, a little, Saturday night, invited some of the people actually from the beat to come over, watch the games. Like, that would be a tough time. Hey, John Mara, Chris Mara, Steve Fish, don't hire anybody on Saturday night, okay? At least wait till weekday, We just don't want it to come down at the wrong time. It has happened before. It's happened to people before. News comes down at the wrong time. But you move on. You plow through it. That's it for this week's Breaking Big Blue. As always, like, subscribe, tell your friends. You're listening to Breaking Blue, Big Blue. I'm Jordan Ronan. See you next time.